In the vast expanse of space, there exists a mind-boggling concept known as the Ringworld, an artificial habitat so colossal that it encircles an entire planet, creating a breathtaking spectacle of science and engineering. But have you ever stopped to wonder, what if our very own Earth was transformed into such a spectacular ring? Today, we're going to dive into that. Why is this interesting? Well, first off, it's just plain awesome to think about our planet as anything other than a regular old ball. Secondly, it could help us understand how planetary systems form and evolve. And thirdly, who doesn't love a good space-themed hypothetical? So let's start at the beginning. How could something like this happen to our nice little rock in space? Well, one possibility is that Earth could naturally form a ring system. Over billions of years, planets form from the gravitational collapse of gas and dust. As the material comes together, most of it ends up forming a flat disk around the star. The Earth formed in a similar way, but it didn't start out as a perfect sphere. It was more like a lumpy potato. Over time, the Earth's gravity pulled itself into a more spherical shape. But what if the Earth's gravity wasn't quite strong enough? What if some parts of the planet were flung into orbit around the planet instead? This is actually pretty plausible. According to NASA, most rocky bodies in the solar system have some degree of equatorial bulge caused by centrifugal force. The added rotation can cause Earth's gravity to be weaker at the equator than at the poles. So theoretically, if Earth spun fast enough, centrifugal force could fling material from the equator into orbit. Scientists believe that this is actually how Saturn's rings formed. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility that something similar could have happened to Earth. Another possibility is that a giant asteroid, or even a rogue moon, could have smashed into the Earth, breaking it apart and sending chunks of rock and dust into orbit. Either way, the result would be the same, a ring of material surrounding the planet. Now let's imagine what this would look like from here on Earth, depending on the size of the ring. It might be visible from almost anywhere on the planet. The rings themselves would appear as thin lines encircling the Earth, and these lines would be constantly changing as the planet rotated. At night, the rings would still be visible, but they would appear darker against the bright stars behind them. This would create a breathtaking view of the night sky, but it would also have some pretty major effects on our climate. Rings typically reflect a lot of sunlight, so they tend to have a cooling effect on the planets below them. In the case of Earth, this could mean the end of our current ice age and potentially trigger a new ice age. Of course, it all depends on the size and composition of the rings. But even a few miles wide, they would likely have a noticeable effect on our weather and seasons. The rings would also have a significant impact on Earth's tides and orbit. Every object in space has a gravitational pull, and the rings would be no exception. They would exert a small gravitational force on Earth, and this force would be felt most strongly at the poles. So, if the rings were close enough to Earth, they could actually slow down our planet's rotation, which could have all sorts of crazy effects on our planet's climate and weather patterns. We're a spacefaring civilization, but living with rings would be challenging. Traveling through space would be difficult due to the rings blocking access to the upper atmosphere and low orbit. And depending on their composition, and stability, we might face frequent meteor showers as rocks rained down from the rings. And speaking of rocks, Saturn's rings are intermediate in complexity, composed of countless rocks and ice particles ranging in size from millimeters to meters across. They are intermediate in complexity, existing somewhere between the simpler rings of Jupiter and Neptune and the more complex rings found around pulsars and black holes. Saturn's rings are intermediate in complexity, existing somewhere between the simpler rings of Jupiter and Neptune and the more complex rings found around pulsars and black holes. How long do ring systems like this last? Well, it depends on a number of factors, including the mass of the planet and the composition of the rings themselves. But, in general, they tend to be pretty long-lived. Some astronomers believe that Saturn's rings may have been around for billions of years, which means that our giant, space bling, could potentially outlast us. But what if we were to advance far enough to create our own artificial rings? This is known as a Dyson ring, named after the brilliant physicist and mathematician Freeman Dyson. These rings would be gigantic structures built from some of the strongest materials known to man, capable of harnessing the power of fusion and rotating at incredible speeds. So what if Earth had giant rings, not just encircling the planet, but extending out into space, forming a massive sphere of light and energy? What would that look like? How would it affect our world? And what possibilities would it open up for humanity? We may never know, but it's fun to speculate. This was a big what if. Do you think having rings would be more of a blessing or a curse? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos of fascinating science and text stories. Thanks for watching.